Oh my God. This is the week that Moon Knight blows up. Episode 2 turned everything up, and the Moon Knight train is definitely getting loaded, as this week gave us a 10 out of 10 from Mr. Knight to Layla to Moon Knight and Khonshu. We got a lot to get into this episode, so let's get right to it. What's up? I'm Kendall with Normies to Nerds, and if Moon Knight blew you away like it did for me, drop a like and sub to this channel. So let's go. First things first, they start off the episode cementing the fact that all of this stuff is real. Like, no one can see the jackal that's chasing Steven, but the damage that is there in the bathroom in the museum is real, as it's gotten obliterated, and it's leading to Steven getting fired. Sorry, Stevie. But it's a clever way by the show's writers to silence the suspicions, and now we can focus on what the hell is going on with Mark, Steven, and Khonshu, as this episode introduces us to Mark and Khonshu, as both are exposed here in this episode. But before we get answers from Layla and Haro as to what's going on with those two, we see Mark and Khonshu try to keep Steven from going any further. But Steven shows a moment of strength as a personality when he tells Mark that he's no longer surrendering his body to him, leading to this amazing sequence that makes me question one of Khonshu's abilities as he freeze frames Steven out of the storage facility to outside. But in comes Layla. And this episode uses Layla to give us some clues and information as to Mark's backstory, because it's revealed that Layla is Mark's wife and she thought he was dead. But in all actuality, he had just cut her off after Khonshu had been continuing to break his mind, and he later reveals that he wants her to be his avatar. But back to this bike scene here, which was one of just the many ways that this show killed this episode cinematically. Layla spills a lot of tea to Steven as she thinks Mark is just using another one of his multiple identities, which actually leaves the door open for Mark to be that TV anchor in Cairo that Sitwell was talking about in Winter Soldier. But she talks about how she figured Mark wasn't dead because of the suit, meaning that yeah, she knows about the suit, and it could be a clue that he has been in the MCU for years at this point. But it seems that the longer Mark has been Moon Knight and an avatar for Khonshu, the more he has become unstable and feels that he needs to distance himself from Layla, even giving her a divorce. I mean, bruh, don't you just feel for Steven right here? And as he finds out that he has a wife and a whole other life that he wishes he could have. But again, later we find out Mark's deeper reason as to why Steven can't have that life, and that is because if he lets Khonshu move on, he'll move on to Layla to make her his new avatar. But as Layla reveals a lot about Mark, Khonshu was exposed as well, as Haro gives us the lowdown on the god, telling us that, yo, these gods are pretty much powerless without an avatar, and that can have a very much deeper meaning, even connecting things to Black Panther and his role with the gods, but we'll talk about that in a different video. But Haro brings up that Mark must have been either easy to break or already broken for Khonshu to have chosen him as an avatar, and I'm actually leaning more towards the side that he was already broken. But we go to see that Haro knows everything that Khonshu is saying to Steven, and it even makes Steven question whether or not he can hear him. And that is because Haro was once Khonshu's avatar. Whoa, let me just stop ourselves right there and say that does not necessarily mean that Haro was once upon a time Moon Knight, because as we'll see later in the episode, you can conjure a suit or the powers of Khonshu in various forms. But Haro reveals the beef that he has with Khonshu and why he left Khonshu for a myth, saying that waiting to avenge justice is not enough because that costs the lives of the innocent. But Steven answers back in a clever way, saying, well, aren't you harming the innocent by judging them before they have even sinned? Some deep stuff. And then Haro goes on to explain why he wants the scarab, but we'll get into that after we talk about some fun stuff right here. And I'm talking about this scene with Mr. Knight making his first appearance. And bruh, talk about a grand entrance with this superhero pose. Like, yo, is the superhero pose really about to be a thing in like every MCU project in Phase 4? But yeah, this was just a clever way to bring in Mr. Knight and introduce us to him. I mean, he looks absolutely dope, slick as hell, the suit is fresh. I think I would rather probably be Mr. Knight for Halloween rather than Moon Knight, because bruh, my man is dapper as hell. Really, I fell in love instantly with Mr. Knight because he really just exemplifies Steven's personality. But we see early on that he has the strength that is granted from Khonshu. And that brings in an interesting thing here because, yes, Steven doesn't know how to fight, but he has that strength, and we see him throw a punch at the jackal that's really not even there, right? So as we see Steven kind of struggle to fight, it makes sense that he can't yet because he just doesn't have that background. However, for folks who are a bit frustrated that Mr. Knight got whooped around, let's be real. This is the first time that Mr. Knight has come out. I would not be shocked if in the future Mr. Knight does not become a badass. And we can't talk about this scene without talking about the invisible jackal, right? Like, bruh, this was absolutely epic. Like the idea to have the Jackal not be visible through most of the shots here in this scene was brilliant because it really sets up a feel cinematically as to what people around this incident are feeling. A bit lost, a bit confused of what's going on, really looking at this guy as just a crazy person in the street, but at the same time, they can feel the impact of the Jackal. So it's cool to see how it still impacts everything around it, and that people may be somewhat aware of that invisible force, but at the end of the day, they only see what is happening with Moon Knight, Mr. Knight. And that leads us into this compromise between Mark and Steven. As Mark says, Steven, look, I know what you're trying to do, but if you keep doing this, more people are going to get hurt. And instantly, Steven agrees and let Moon Knight take control. And again, another awesome moment. And this might actually be the beginning where we see the two of these could learn to coexist and come to an agreement. And bro, when Moon Knight takes over, that is hella dope, man. Now, I gotta say, it probably looks funny to people that are there in the MCU to see him change into his outfit and then to see him just go ahead and jump on the car and run away, climbing up the wall and just running, right? But this is the moment that really kind of hooks me into Moon Knight. We hear Oscar Isaac's kind of talking in his regular voice, but as he's running away, yo, the CGI on that looks dope. The Moon Knight suit looks absolutely amazing. His movement is fluid. And then he thinks of the most crazy way to defeat this Jackal, and bruh, it was absolutely brutal. I am absolutely in love with this Moon Knight character already. This is a flag planting moment for Moon Knight for me, man. All the dope stuff that we got to see, people in the MCU have no idea of what was actually going on. They just saw someone who they thought was having seizures, changing suits and climbing up walls. Someone who they think is definitely crazy. But yo, out of everything that happened in the episode, this following conversation between Mark and Steven and then Mark and Khonshu put a bow on this episode and really kind of gave it the 10 out of 10 that we needed from episode 2. Because Steven starts to talk to Mark from the mirror, and that's something that threw Mark all the way off because he's never been on this side of things, and Steven has never been on that side of things, and it's funny how Steven starts to freak out. But you start to feel the weight of what's really going on here, personal-wise, right? Because Mark wishes that Steven could be free. Mark wishes that he can move on and live a new life with Steven, but he can't. And Mark continues to shut Steven out even as they both get stronger. And the more this goes on, the more it's going to take compromise from the both of them to continue to coexist, because like Mark said, both of them are getting stronger and it's harder for them to take over. But we see Mark's burden in his relationship with Khonshu as to why he will not let Steven take over and move on. And that is because Khonshu allegedly wants to move on to Layla after he is done with Mark. And I'm not sure if this is just a play from Khonshu, because to be honest, Khonshu was kind of a dickhead at this point. I'm not sure if it's a play from Khonshu to keep Mark from moving on, because he really loves having Mark as his avatar because of what he can do. But the threat of that makes Mark feel as if he cannot move on, because that is the last thing he wants is for Layla to have her mind broken like his is. Now, after all of that, we can't forget the Scarab, because we did see Haro pick up the Scarab from a homeless man and then kill him. And we really see the dark side of Haro as to why he is the villain here. I love the design on the Scarab and how the Scarab looks like an interesting piece of technology here. Now, it's going to be a compass pointing right to Amit's tomb. And I think that's a big deal, because in order for Amit to have power in this world, I think it's kind of hinted that Amit has to choose a new avatar. And I think that Haro is trying to make it so that he will be the avatar that Amit chooses, so that Amit's plan to judge the entire world comes through. And if that is the case, this is a huge threat for the MCU, as millions of people are at risk of getting killed at one time. But I think we'll see that Haro does make his way to Amit's tomb. But also as well, Mark will meet him there with Khonshu, as we do get an interesting shot of Khonshu transporting Mark to Egypt. Look, we'll have to talk about that in another video. But yo, this episode was absolutely loaded. Again, 10 out of 10. We've had so much stuff to go into. I got like 2 videos to make coming out of this episode, so make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think below about Mr. Knight. Do you think he's cool? Are you excited to see him become a better fighter in the future? Let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next video.